And so what we want to talk about, Mr. Chairman, is essentially issues that are very important to San Antonio. This is a San Antonio audience. And specifically, since you are chairman of the natural resources, they want to hear about water, about how it's perceived, how we're perceived on the state level, some of the issues that we want to bring before you and want to get your opinion on. And so it's going to have a water and a San Antonio flavor, so we want to do that. But before we do that, we understand that San Antonio obviously is a big, important part of the entire state, and that you are not just chairman of natural resources, but a state representative, and have your own district and your own needs to represent. But what we'd like to hear from you, in general terms, is what are the big issues for the state, not dealing with water, because we're going to be talking about that in a second, but just the big issues that the state of Texas is going to face in the 2013 legislative session.
Well, thank you, Robert. First of all, I want to thank you for the invitation to be here in Alamo City. Robert, this is about the third or fourth kind of event we've done together. I've seen Robert more this interim than I saw him all last session. But it's good to be here. I want to thank our friends at Valero for the invitation. Valero not only is a partner in the community of San Antonio, they are a big partner for us in Jefferson County. For those of y'all who have never gone through hurricanes, ask the people at Valero what it's about. They can tell you. They were there for two of them that we suffered through. But it is indeed a pleasure to be here. The main issue we want to talk about today is the most important issue in the state of Texas, and one that basically I'm spending all my time doing. So if you directly ask me what are the main issues, it's water, 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 water. But that's not really all of it. This is the gospel from Allan Ritter for the way I see the state of Texas. We have come through this recession, so to speak. Some people call it depression, in much better shape than most states in this country. We're very fortunate that we always have, and I think we always will have, a very fiscally conservative state. We're very fortunate that the legislature only meets 2 years, so we can't mess things up as much as being there every year. So things are a lot better in Texas than they are in other states. We're seeing sales tax revenues increase and such, margins tax revenues increase, probably more to do with the I call it the manipulation from the comptroller's office. Some call it promulgated rules. So those things are looking a little bit better. Where Texas is also is, we're still a very fast-growing state. And in my opinion, what you're seeing happening is that while we're growing fast in population and such, our requirements for infrastructure are not keeping up with that pace. So that spread is getting bigger. And what does that mean? With water and transportation, it means a lot. To me, you have to be very concerned about how far down the line you go, where that spread is so far you can't catch up, which is one thing that I'm very concerned about with water issue. Public education, always a very, very key issue. Public education and health are about 88% of our budget, our general revenue. San Antonio Express News, don't quote that one because I don't have it in front of me, but it's somewhere like that. And we have multiple lawsuits questioning the constitutionality. So again, that we'll be on pins and needles waiting for the courts to address that action to tell us that we're doing it the wrong way or just what. Again, even with public education, the growth factor is a very, very big part of what we have to look for in the future, because you have 80,000 new kids every year starting the first grade. 80,000 new kids. Now, I don't think my elementary schools allow any more than about 300, so you can kind of put your pencil to it. of what kind of infrastructure you're going to need to take care of that kind of growth. So there again, this is another issue that ties in with water and transportation, is where are we going to be out in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and 50 years. Those really are the key issues. What, to me, another one is what is the federal government going to be sending us? All of us in business, I have not talked to anybody in the world of business, and my own business. One of the most, well, not one of, the most uncontrollable expense we have is health. We just don't know what, we don't know what to plan out more, you know, a year or two. What's the federal government going to give to us? What are they going to give to us as far as air and water regulations that honestly we see all the time, new issues coming down from EPA or sometimes actually through other entities that are changing the way the ball game is. And it makes management a lot more difficult to do on every level. But those, to me, are the key issues. And, you know, I thank the good Lord every day that I live in Texas. It's a great state, it's a beautiful state, good people that want to, that want their state to be good, want their, you know, want the people to be prosperous and grow. We just have a lot of tough decisions ahead of us.
Well, thank you. And, you know, it sounds like you can ask that question and the response is the same session after session after session after session. So these are issues that obviously you and your colleagues are going to have to tackle. But when we talk about water specifically, the issues seem to change, but they generally are the same also. And so I want to give you a little bit of a backdrop about San Antonio and what we face here and how the state might look at it. Unlike Houston, Dallas, Austin, the other big major cities, San Antonio is a groundwater city. These other cities essentially get their water from surface, which is a totally different regulatory scheme. So San Antonio has been at the forefront and sometimes as targets of groundwater rules. And so the groundwater regulation that's out there very much affects the way we regulate our groundwater, obviously, and how we fund projects, how we grade projects, how we get water into this community. One big issue is groundwater districts, how they tend to regulate. And the whole issue of the water, and it's usually the movement of water when we talk about regulation. So what ideas are there out there about groundwater districts, about issues regarding groundwater districts, everything from the permitting system to just other regulatory issues?
Boy, he went right to the heart. Yeah, I love doing these with Robert. Chairman Puente, let me tell you, it's, let me back up. With water, all the legislation we have done, when Robert was chairman before that, it's very slow moving. When we do a piece of legislation, it takes years for us to start really getting data that we can know that it's working or not. My good friend, Mr. Puente, represents the good people of San Antonio, and his job is to get water and get water the cheapest way for San Antonio or whoever you work for, which I solely agree with. And the emphasis is on groundwater districts, where we're at as far as me and a lot of members, I won't say every member in the Texas legislature is, it's about giving the tools in the toolbox not only for Robert and Saul's to do their job, but also for every other entity to do their job. And this little thing called sound science, very, very important, because all we're really doing, whether it's on the level of SAWS or the legislature is we're managing an asset. This asset's water, whether it's underground or surface water. Yeah, they are different. They are very different. By law, they're different, whether ownership or such, but they are very different. They have to be managed different. What my good friend is trying to get me to tell you is that the groundwater districts now, under the plans they're working at, they do not work efficiently, quickly enough, and to the advantage that we can move that water. And he's right. Based on whose science? Based on the science that a groundwater district does, based on the science that an entity like SAWS does, or the Water Development Board.
Mr. Chairman, isn't there just one science?
Well, you hope so, but we don't see it like that. You got one and some others got another one, and hopefully one of the things I would like to do is get it more to one. Where I think most of the members of the legislature are is that if we have an entity, whether it's surface water, whether it is groundwater, and there is sufficiently enough water in that entity, and let's say with groundwater, because with solids, that's, Robert's right, that's going to be the big, the way that y'all develop. How many acre feet you need in the next 50 years, Rob?
Next 50 years, probably we've got 50,000 acre feet, 75,000.
Well, that's not as bad as, okay. But his job is to develop that water. What we need to make sure is that the groundwater districts who, just like a river, there's already people that are dipping their straw in there, so to speak, over the history of the period of the next 50 years, that we have water in there and that we can manage it, that we don't end up not only knocking SAWS out of the ability to handle that 50,000 acre feet, but the people that are already there with their straws in it. And this is where the kind of the debate and the battle is going to be to a large degree is how solid is this science. We finished the first DFC process last year. I'm getting that actually end of 10, wasn't it? And they came out in 11. And we have some people that believe certain groundwater districts, DFCs, are a joke. We have some groundwater districts that believe that certain utilities or entities that want water are that their number, their hydrology is a joke. But we haven't had any court tests yet. And I'm going, well, okay. The checks and balance system is through courts and appeals and such. Do I personally think we have as sound a science as we need in groundwater? No, I don't. Is there a lot of groundwater out there? Yes, there is. Is there a lot of brackish groundwater? Yes, there is. Do we know what it is yet? I don't think we do. Is that going to be a major part of solving our problem to develop the 9 million acre feet of water we need for the state of Texas? Yes, it is. It's going to be a very big part of it, just like fresh water, water from run of the river or storage, and other entities like desal. And this one thing that San Antonio has been the poster child probably through the whole United States of America is conservation measures. We need to do what y'all have done here and figure out how we can get that, I hate to use this word, mandated, but an incentive for other areas in Texas to adopt what is proven and worked in San Antonio. But in order for me to look at you and say, Robert, we're going to take care of everything you want to as far as groundwaters, show me the science.
Well, we're going to rely on some of our House members to do that, like Lyle Larson. But that's essentially a question I want to ask you about is how not only you handle the water situation that comes before you as chairman of that committee, but the individual members that come in. I would imagine it's still the same, but I remember serving on natural resources, the members that came before Natural Resources were not from Dallas, not from Houston, not from Austin. They essentially, again, were surface water, and they didn't need as much relief from the state as maybe the rural members do. So, and if they did come before our committee, it was to create municipal utility districts, to create MUDs. And so you tend to have a member of the legislature who represents multiple counties, maybe even multiple groundwater districts, and they come in, one individual, with essentially a unified voice because he or she is one individual. In Bexar County, we have 10 members, and sometimes we have 10 different voices, or at least maybe 2 or 3 different camps. So how do you handle that? How do you handle when a delegation as big as Bexar County comes to you? And a perfect example is the legislation that was repeatedly filed regarding Bexar Met. How do you handle that when you have an urban city having multiple ideas from its members?
I was hoping we wouldn't have to talk about Bexar Met. My hair went gray and then it went. Bexar Met.
Sorry about that.
You know, there's not a simple answer to that question because my belief is that every member of the legislature has that same opportunity as me or anybody else to push their ideas and move it. But you build relationships, just like you and I. When I got there, you know, you've been there. You're a little older than I am. And
I still have hair.
Yeah. Your cereal's better. And we didn't agree on everything, but we developed a relationship, got to work together on a lot of issues. I've been lucky as a chairman. Speaker Strauss has put some very good members on that committee. Last year for Representative Larson's freshman year, put on a wonderful member. I hope he's back on it next time. He's got the attitude of let's go to work, let's solve the problem. That's worth $1 million in the Texas House of Representatives. That's worth its weight in gold. Somebody that wants to jump in the issue and work to solve these problems, good, bad, or ugly. You know, the Bexar Med deal, we just kind of worked, guided it, but the delegation didn't. Very simple. Trey, Lyle, all the members from Ruthie, everybody, you know, had their say, and that's how it's supposed to work. Now, did Lyle Larson or Trey Martinez Fisher or somebody else work a lot of hours on it? Yeah, they did. Sure did. That's the way you do it.
Well, we appreciate
and
that.
y'all do have a very strong delegation. Sometimes I wish someone would be sick and not show up.
And one of the things we want to do, Chairman, and for the audience out there also, is to take questions from the audience. And so please start thinking of some of the questions that you may want to ask Chairman Ritter as we go along with this. But coming back a little bit to groundwater districts, and obviously it's very important to us. For example, permitting. Our Chief Financial Officer, who's here, Doug Evanson, he doesn't have enough money, so he has to borrow money to pay for some of these projects. And these are multi-million-dollar projects. For example, our project, bringing water from Gonzales County, we've already spent $40 million, not a single drop yet. 2013, it should be online, and so we will have that water coming in. He had to issue long-term debt. The permit coming from Gonzales County is good for 5 years. So it's very hard to justify that. It's a big risk for our ratepayers. Is there any relief in sight on the permitting issue regarding export permits, production permits?
Hey, are you talking about the transportation permit or the production permit?
Export permits, transportation permits.
Yeah, I think that's an issue that we're going to actively address this time, and Lyle and I haven't specifically talked about that. We've talked about many other things, but I think that's a legitimate concern. I think it's one that we can address, and we understand the concerns that it brings about, okay, we're going out financing, we're doing bonding and such, and here we have a short-term permit, long-term financing that just doesn't look good, doesn't work. I wish I could look you now and say, buddy, that one's going to get passed, but you know me better than that.
Well,
It's one that I think is a legitimate concern and that I want us to work on and address.
Well, and we are going to provide you that kind of help, hopefully. Other issues.
That means he is.
Other issues we have here are just, you know, the sense of just having the rest of the state know that what, as you mentioned, that we are one of the leaders in water conservation. And again, I appreciate the comment of not just in Texas, but the nation. But we do recognize, even though we are such a good leader on that you cannot conserve your way out of future planning of the need for water or out of even drought conditions. So what we're doing here is we have a water management plan that's before our board, and they're going to deliberate and hopefully pass it within the next month or so, and then back over to City Council. And so some of the issues that we've been talking about, we've been addressing in that water management plan. A big part of this plan is, for example, water conservation is still in that plan, and is to bring additional water supplies in here from, again, outside of this area. Because the legislature has told us that we are limited in the amount of water that we can get from our own aquifer, the other's aquifer. And so we're looking at some proposals, and they're coming from different regions of the state: West Texas, or at least west of here, southwest of here, south of here, and northeast of here, 4 different proposals. One of them is not in the groundwater district. The other 3 are in groundwater districts. What is your thought about future groundwater districts where they're still being developed, and your thought about them being developed under by county lines? Again, as you know, aquifers do not recognize political boundaries, and those issues of whether or not it should be a local or regional or a state issue as far as regulation.
Well, looking back now, Robert, and you might disagree with me, but I wish when we would have originally drawn up, started doing groundwater districts, that we would have looked out farther than we did. I'm one that really believes that groundwater management of groundwater districts should be around that aquifer. And aquifers lines don't match county lines or city limits lines or anything like that. So, I believe that the ultimate way about establishing this for management would be for us to have groundwater conservation districts over that single aquifer, preferably as few groundwater districts as possible with a management scheme. That's not the way it is. We have 98 groundwater districts in Texas now. We'll probably, where's Liz is here? Well, let me introduce Liz Fazia, who is our chief of staff at the committee, clerks, at the Natural Resource Committee. How many groundwater districts do we have in Texas now? About 98? 98. We have 98. We'll probably have a few more.
Mr. Chairman, if he had said 108, she would have said 108.
Well, Texas Water Development Board's here, they should be able to tell us. So, but anyway, whatever it is, we do have this. We also have the GMAs that through the DFC process that I think could be a entity for more of a regionalization if you have multiple groundwater districts, far as managing that groundwater district. The whole thing to me is, what's the best methodology of managing that tub? Because that's, it's a tub full of water. Just like a river authority managing its surface water in that river basin. What's the best way of managing it, and can we get there? I can tell you that I promise you there is no way that somebody can file a bill and get it passed to regionalize or do away with these groundwater districts and do one for the Edwards, Trinity, or, you know, all the, you know, it's just not going to happen. Politically, that would never happen. Is it a better management strategy, fewer groundwater districts in a legitimate area of a groundwater aquifer? Yeah, I think so.
Well, let me see if there's any questions from the audience. Arthur Emerson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Ritter, we're blessed in San Antonio to have a municipally owned system that is doing a superb job. And we have a great ample water supply, clearly we need more, but it's at moderate, affordable rates. As we look at the big picture and under your leadership at the state, we're aware about IOU water providers that serve smaller communities with disenfranchised citizens of the state who are complaining about unimpeded rate hikes that impact the disenfranchised. Water bill may average here about $50, $60 a month. In some cases in trailer parks that have an independent water provider, it's like $150 a month. And I know this is an issue that's facing the state. We as citizens of San Antonio, by and large, care about the whole region. What can you tell us about what's happening to regulate the water supply so that equal access at a fair rate is applied to all citizens of the state?
Now, Alan, that trailer park comment has nothing to do with East Texas.
Is it Arthur's trailer park?
Yeah, no, ask.
Well, first, in that general type question, I would have to tell you is I would have to dig into each and every case because we find it very common when you're talking about rural water supply companies, IOUs, or whatever, that depending on the situation of the infrastructure, how they are in, the size of the project, we have many of them all over Texas, not just in East Texas, but everywhere. You might only have 60 to 100 households in it that, okay, they've still got a major capital intensive project there that they're having to underwrite. Most of the ones that we have researched when we've had calls, TCEQ is very involved in this, very on top of it, and what we find is that there is rational there is a rational process of decision making to justify that rate increase. Maybe not always, but I can tell you throughout Texas and geographically pretty much anywhere that on these rural small complexes, it's very common to see $200 a month just water bill. And that's because you have so few people, so few entities spreading that cost basis. And we've had some, actually we're looking at one right now in East Texas that is a older facility that was an IOU that they're gone. And it's going to have to be updated. It's a public safety question and factor now. So we're looking at with the counties and different entities of getting neighboring residential areas and trying to be able to combine a facility where it keeps this cost down to where it's reasonable. So it's all about each project, about each program and such. When we're talking about those type of values, whether it's drinking water and or wastewater.
Any other question? I think, Lisa, maybe one more question? Yes.
Thank you. I was curious, we've spoken a lot about groundwater districts today. I was curious if there's going to be any conversations in the legislature about separating the brackish water out from the current groundwater district rules.
There'll be discussion.
Thank you, Chairman.